All right, cool. Hi, Kate. Can you hear me just fine and see the screen? Good. All right, awesome. Okay. Hey, everybody. Hi. Let's bring our attention up to the big screen. Hello. Hopefully the last homework wasn't too bad. It was a lot less heavy weight time-wise than the previous homeworks. And maybe it was kind of fun and like maybe therapeutic to kind of like, you know, make it look pretty and aesthetically pleasing, if that's your cup of tea. So let's go ahead and get into today's announcements. I should be recording. Yep. Some due dates, just remember our due dates. Homework 8 is due today. That was the CV homework. Please try to get it in if you haven't gotten it in yet. It's, you know, it's important for you. I realized one of the students brought up a really good point to me. If you don't feel comfortable with like personal information, we still encourage you to make your CV because it will be useful everywhere else. But you can have two options. You can either like make a mock CV with like fake information if you want to, or you can make your own personal CV and just kind of like maybe with like a text, or not a text editor, but like a photo editor. Like there's lots of various tools you can use where you can like cross out information that you feel is really important to you or personal. I just want to emphasize that we will never share your information with anybody. It stays in B courses under the submitted files, and we will just look at it, glance at it. We won't even really like, you know, look deeply into your personal information or anything. We're just checking to make sure that you did it. So just a personal promise that we will never share your information with other people. It will stay within the staff only. But again, you don't have to submit personal information if you don't feel comfortable. For example, if you don't feel comfortable with your email, your phone number, or whatever it may be, put a fake one, or just put like you know, like to be written or something for our version. But I still encourage you to write it out because you're gonna have to write it eventually if you want to apply for anything. So might as well just get the work done now rather than later. Yeah, so homework 9 will be released today, and it will be due next Tuesday as normal. Homework 9 is going to be making a personal website. So all you're going to have to submit is a URL to your website. I think this is like my favorite assignment in the entire semester, just because it's like the most aesthetically pleasing. It's like the most artsy, I guess one could say. I really like making personal websites. It's kind of like a minor hobby of mine. And I just want to reiterate to everybody that like we are going to have check-in reports for your final projects in about a week or two. We haven't decided the actual date yet, but please start coding if you haven't already. You know, you should like already have a game plan for how you're going to start doing the problem you want to simulate, or you want to like calculate whatever for your final project. And you should already have some lines of code started. It doesn't have to be a ton, but you should start thinking about your code, if not writing it already. We will be expecting there to be some code written before your final check-in in a couple weeks, a week or two. The deadlines, I just want to read it again, the deadlines will be approaching fast, so please make sure that you are making progress on those projects. We realized we didn't really tell you about these really useful tools. I encourage you to check out Google Colab. It's not the best, it's pretty buggy, but it's the equivalent of like Google Docs or like Google whatever, but for Jupyter notebooks. I recommend not working on at the same time on those. They get really buggy when two people are on the same notebook at the same time. So if you do it, make sure you stagger your work. So maybe some person works on it in the morning, another works on it at night, that way, and save it iteration by iteration. That way it's not like getting confused. Even if you're not in the same cell, it'll still confuse you up. That's just a bug of Google Colab, unfortunately. Your alternative might be GitHub, if you're more familiar with that, from those of you that are like in the 61 series or have used it other places. We will talk about GitHub in a little while, maybe about a week or so. I can't remember exactly where it's going to fall in our curriculum. It's more or less just to expose you to what it is. So you're going to have to be doing a little bit of like research, and come ask us if you're curious about getting more familiar with GitHub. We can give you some resources to learn it a bit faster than everybody else will see it here. But those are like the two like easiest ways to work collaboratively with code. Of course, you could just like divvy up the project in such a way that one person has like their own notebook and another person has their own notebook, and you kind of do your own separate parts that are independent of each other. And then at the end, you kind of put them together like a puzzle piece. That can also work too. However you want to divvy it up is up to you, but make sure you start writing code. Also, ask for help if you need it. Email any one of us, ask on the Discord, come to office hours. We have, 5 office hours a week. We get pretty good attendance, but please keep coming. And don't forget that Discord is an option, so you can get all the help you need. Attendance is for the virtual people and people watching asynchronously. For those of you in lecture, there's the paper going around, so that should make its way to you soon. Are there any questions? The final project due date is going to be, I believe, the week before RRR week. I believe that'll be like when we officially make them due sometime around then, and we'll be presenting. So we'll have like a whole slot of a few days for you to pick a day you want to present in front of your peers, present your project. It'll be recorded talks for you. We will record them and we'll send them out to the class. You'll be able to cut them and paste them or like edit them in such a way that you can select your section and put it on your websites if you would like. Is there any questions about that? More information will come in like about a week or so. We'll like make the assignment on B courses and we'll like have a whole announcement and all that with lots of details. Any more questions? Oh, hi, Kate. I think I might be muted. That's why. Sorry about that. I was muted.
Is there an equivalent? Oh, sorry, there's a phone call. Is there an equivalent of this class? Like for instance, next semester, there's something showing up. Like, is there a next step, or do you recommend taking it again, or are we good?
So I wouldn't, if you've taken this class once, I wouldn't recommend taking this class again. But that is a good question. There are a lot of different classes available at Berkeley that teach coding. I would say like a next step from this class, if you really want to keep learning more, might be Physics 77. They do cover the basics of Python in a couple weeks, but then they start going into more physics related / statistics related questions. That, or if you want to re-solidify your coding and you feel like you didn't quite get everything that we taught in the in terms of basics, I might recommend taking Data 8, which talks a bit more statistics. And then if you really want to go deep into the way code works with Python and be a little bit more CS with it, you could take 61A. Although I recommend that purely out of interest and not because you feel like you have to. That class is really hard for no reason. But yeah, those are your 3 options if you want to keep going. But I think having Python DeCal will prepare you well enough to do any upper division physics courses that require a bit of coding. I think you'll be just fine if you want to do that too. Cool. Any other questions by anybody? Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. Yeah, so let's do a little thinking exercise. Well, it's not really a thinking exercise. We're not doing like a small group or anything like that. I just wanted you to think about this. Here's a scenario I proposed to you. Let's imagine you're deciding what student gets into your REU program this summer. You're looking at applications in January. And this is like your prompt that you basically had them submit with, a short personal statement, not to exceed 2 pages, single space text. This in particular was like the prompt for like a year ago for the University of Florida's REU program. They want you to talk about your career aspirations in astronomy, aspects of astronomy you're most passionate about, why or how this program can benefit you in some way. So that's like in the form of an essay, 2 pages, single space, all great and all. And you're a reviewer looking at students' applications. Maybe you had 20, 30 students apply, maybe you had 100, whatever it may be. And you narrowed it down to a few really good students, but you only have like 5 spots. Mainly, you only have 1 spot for these 2 students. Kind of throwing us back to our days of writing college application essays, maybe. Yeah, blah generic essay. Yeah. Okay, so basically they're like really comparable. They have similar backgrounds, whatever it may be. But you notice one difference between student A and student B. There's a website. Yes, there's a blue little URL, and you get kind of curious. Now, this may or may not be clicked on, depending on how much time your reviewer has. If it doesn't get clicked on, well, that sucks. But if it does, well, now you have their attention. It's interesting. They may or may not click that. And if they click that, you're in luck. Why? Because now you have a whole bunch of information you could share with them, pictures, detailed information about what you've done, if you make a really good website, they might be impressed, say, oh, wow, this student carries themselves very professionally, and you may have a leg up on the other person. This is just a very basic example of what being like really prepared for something might be. There's plenty of other examples I could think of. If you do a cold email and you have a link to your website, gives you a lot more information about an undergrad than just like, hey, I'm interested in physics. That's pretty bland. So it's always good to have a website, in my opinion. It may or may not work. I'm not going to say that it will get you anything guaranteed, but makes your chances just a little bit better, in my opinion. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into professional websites. So what are the aspects of a professional website that make them, valuable and good? So let's talk about it. It's a great idea to have a professional website because they can contain a lot of information, and like a good website should have the following like kind of components to it, I would say. You have a home page, you have a research page, about me page, and a way to contact you that's easy and clear to see. Not every website has to be exactly like this, but it's good to have these components: a home, a research section, about me section, and a way to contact you. So you might be wondering, how do I make a website? That seems like a pretty daunting task. Well, luckily, in today's age, it's actually really easy, and it can get as complicated as you want it to. So this really depends on how much time and effort you're willing to spend to make an aesthetically pleasing website. Your options could be something as complicated as github.io, which isn't that complicated if you like kind of coding and having a lot of freedom. And it could be as simple as Google Sites, where you literally just click and drag, like from a couple set options, and it looks pretty generic, but hey, it doesn't look bad. Squarespace, WordPress, Wix, they're similar ideas. You drag and drop, and you kind of have a lot of customization, but you're using like some service, so they have to give you caveats, like your URL might be really long and ugly, might have like .wix on the top of it or something, unless you pay money. I will never ask you to spend money for a course. If you really want like a custom URL or something with like your name.com or something, you would have to spend money on that, but that is entirely up to you. It is not required for this course. All of these websites offer free options, and that's what we're going to be using for this course, unless you really want to go do that, but by no means will that impress us any other way. But yeah, so those are some options. And then your last option would be like writing some code from scratch with like a Adobe Dreamweaver, for example, like an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For those of you that really like coding or have found that you really like coding, you can code it up from scratch just like you would like a program in Python. But that takes a bit of learning, and I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you had lots and lots of time or you're really, really curious. So just to visualize what I'm talking about. So complexity, it starts at like Google Sites, like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, and then like the more complex we get is like github.io, where there's still like templates and stuff that you can use. And then eventually but you're still like coding up with like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You're kind of just filling in the blanks. And then we get into like straight up raw coding with those languages. These HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are different languages that are essentially coding languages, but they're meant for web-based editing and like designing websites. That's kind of what they're built for. So they're not the same kind of coding language as you would think with like Python, or if you've ever heard of like C++. They're a bit different in their own respects, and they have their own different syntaxes. But they are very useful. And with that added complexity comes freedom. So with Google Sites, you kind of only get to choose like very generic selections of like what your website can look like. They have like themes, and you could plug and drop in whatever. I mean, you could customize it with like whatever text you're going to write and images you include, but you'll see a lot of Google's websites look almost identically the same, and you can kind of see that it's a Google website like without even looking at it for a few seconds. And the farther right we get, the more like complicated and free you become, or like the more freedom you have to make your own creative decisions. So you can put like a tiny little whatever and customize the little details with the code. But with that, it gets more complex. So we're just gonna talk about like each component and like what we expect to see from your homepage or from your website. So your homepage should give the visitor a gist of like what you are, what you do, what you care about. This usually includes like links to GitHub, which is like a website that holds all your code repositories and whatnot. We'll talk about that later. Your social media platforms and maybe your LinkedIn account if you have one. It's recommended that you include a picture of yourself. You don't have to if you don't feel comfortable, but people love to know what you look like. An application that's just a name as opposed to a name with a face, I don't know. That's up to you to decide which one you think is going to be more likable, but typically the one that has a face associated. I mean, just think about when you're socializing with people. It's a lot easier to forget a name than it is to forget a face. So I encourage you to put a picture of your face if you feel comfortable. Preferably if you're smiling even is like bonus points. I think that like adds a bit of likability in my opinion. But again, this is only up to this is up to your freedom. Like you don't have to do any of this really if you don't feel comfortable with it. Read your research page. This is going to be another it doesn't necessarily have to be its own page, but it should be its own section on your website. This is arguably the most important part of your website for getting future research. So if you're interested in going into academia or getting a job or whatever, this is kind of like your resume page essentially. So typically, this is what application reviewers and postdocs will look at first if they go to your website and they say, oh, hey, there's a research section. Let me click on that. Like, oh, wow, they didn't talk about all this in their 2 pages of writing. Let me see all this stuff. And then you should, it's not necessarily required, but it's recommended to put like your curriculum vitae on that page, as well as somewhere else on your website, wherever it's the most easily accessible and clearly easy to find. And this research page should include highlights of like what you've done throughout your undergrad or high school if you've done research in high school as well. For now, I recommend if you don't have lots of experience to pull from, that's totally fine. But I recommend at least starting with your final project for this class. It'd be important. It might be a good idea to put your proposal that you wrote up, link that on there. Maybe an image of what encapsulates what you're doing. Maybe write a little summary about what your final project is going to be. And then when you're done, you can even put a link to your presentation that will record for you and you'll be able to upload there. You'll have a presentation just ready to go. Most people don't even have that on their website, a video recorded live presentation, which look really, really good, considered a talk on your CV. So yeah. And this is just giving you a good starting point to revise off of. Of course, you will hopefully, as you go through your undergrad, you will try to apply for more things, do more research, whatever, build up your curriculum vitae, as one would say, and your website's going to evolve and turn into a really beautiful thing. But for now, the bare minimum, I recommend just starting with the final project for your research experience if you don't have anything else. Is there any questions about that? Okay. And then I think this one is kind of last and not necessarily the most important, but I encourage you to include it. It's an about me page. So talk about yourself a little bit more in depth. This is kind of how you market yourself as a person. Normally you never get a chance to talk about this on your applications, what you like to do, how are you as a person? This matters kind of the most, I'd say, when you're applying to graduate school and they're looking at who you are as a person. How will you fit into a department with a bunch of other people? This is a very underappreciated thing that you can include that can make you seem really nice. So maybe you have hobbies here that you talk about. Maybe you like to do photography or whatever. Maybe you have a really interesting backstory of how you got into research, a very non-traditional path, whatever that may be. That could all add up to who you are as a person. Maybe if you want to include really nice pictures of you and your family or whatever. Again, this is all subjective and up to your comfortability with what you're comfortable putting on a website. For most of the free websites, it'll be really hard for somebody to Google your name and find that website because it's really small. So it's kind of like a discrete link and you can keep it that way. They're kind of really long. So copying and pasting them into Google every time would be really difficult. So if you feel nervous about somebody just Googling your name, chances are you probably won't have that happen unless you pay for a custom URL or something like that. But no promises to be made there. Just letting you know that it's not going to be the first thing that pops up on Google when you search your name. It's a good gauge of character in my opinion. You try not to get too informal though. I recommend keeping it somewhat professional, mildly professional with some artistic freedom. So probably don't put memes all over the place. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily, because professional people probably will still be looking at it if you submit it to them or send it to them, but it could give you a nice way to express yourself and who you are as a person. Extras, these are not required in any way, shape, or form, but they tend to add a little bit of wholeness to the whole website, like bring it together, I guess is one way to put it. So for example, if you have like a really cool hobby, you should totally include it. We had a student last semester who had her own like store. She like ran a store on Etsy.com and sold lots of really cool stuff. And she totally included a link to her Etsy page or whatever. Maybe you have a YouTube channel or something, you're a vlogger. I don't know. Some common examples, like I think the most basic one for like astro people is photography. I don't know why, but like every astronomer loves photography. We can go to so many of these websites I'm going to show you. Like so many of them have astrophotography. It looks really nice. It's really pretty. Very common hobby for astronomers, for example. But it's not the only thing you can put. There's lots of different ones. Oftentimes people like to include like their own like hobby page. Like if it's like a big enough hobby for you. So maybe you're a musician, maybe you really care about that or whatever it may be. Yeah, for example, my hobby page is like kind of considered like teaching. I like to teach. Maybe I hope that was kind of conveyed over this semester. If not, I'm sorry. But yeah, I like teaching, so I like to include that as my thing, like my little hobby that I like to add about myself. And then I recommend making like a contact page or like some way to contact you, maybe with your email address, like links to your LinkedIn, however you feel most comfortable with people on the internet contacting you in a safe way. Typically email is the safest, but that's up to you. And now it's time to just do the fun part. We're gonna look at examples. I don't know, which one should we look at first? Mine? Okay, I heard mine. I promise I didn't make that up. It's not just, it wasn't just me. Hopefully the internet works. Okay, cool. Oh, I forgot to add them. You can add them really quickly. Oh, you did? Okay. I'll go through the instructors too. Here's mine. I made it with github.io. So this is like what it would look like. I have a link to my CV. So if you click it, it like automatically loads up my CV with all my work experience and stuff. We go back, it has like an about me page. You could see pictures of me as a kid. Yeah, me smiling back when I had blue and purple hair, all that fun stuff. What else do we have? You know, this is kind of the money page. This is the one that like matters the most, your research page. So what I like to do is like include pretty pictures and plots from my research, animations, maybe links to posters I presented at talks, at conferences, images that I took of my research. You know, maybe you have like a whole presentation you gave, like a talk. This is basically what you're going to upload for, like, if you want to, for your Python DeCal final project. This is a YouTube link. You can go to that video and watch me give a talk about 4-point statistics for the turbulent interstellar medium with all that stuff going on. And I give a little summary of my research journey. I have like a community page for like teaching, like what I like to do, pictures. Spoiler alert, I will take a class photo, only with your consent. You don't have to be in the photo if you don't want to, but these are the people that wanted to be in class photos for the DeCal. And I like to show people and brag about it to my family that I have students. They're like, what? Yeah, and these are like some like my hometown stuff. But you can see this gives you a lot more information than just that 2-page essay, right? And this allows our interviewer to see a lot more about me personally than if I didn't have the website there. And then of course, a contact page. If you want to contact me, reach out to me. But let's look at some more other ones, because mine is just one example of many. Y'all said to reload it. Stop presenting. Here we go. And present again. Here we go. Which instructor should we look at next? All right, fine. I'll pick Emily's. So this is Emily's. It looks completely different, but it was also made with GitHub, and it used like a code template. And more information about how to do this will be posted on like the homework document. We'll post like a homework 8 document or 9 document. But yeah, so like Emily is a CS person, so she likes to make games and stuff. So you can like click on all these different things that she did in her classes, and it has lots of information about what she did in them. I think this takes back to home. Yeah, like simulations of like cool stuff. Yeah, it's a jellyfish. Wow. Yep. No, it's impressive. It's impressive. It's impressive. But yeah, and this may look familiar to you, this template, because I also used it to make the Python decal.github.io website. If you saw that when you were applying for the course. Huh? Industry baby.1. Oh, nice. Yes. Don't worry about that. That was for class, I promise. Where are we at? Where are we at? We can click on Isla's. Make sure we're on time. Yeah. So here's Isla's website. Very similar to mine. We use the same template. And we can like look through all of Isla's work experience and stuff. She has like a poster that she did over the summer for characterizing the time evolution of free energy proxies to forecast west limb flares. Yeah. And then look at this, this is like a final project from one of her courses, like the 3-body problem. It's like really cool looking. You could put that for your final project for the decal, for example. Yeah, and there's an about Isla page with her hiking. Really cool. What else could we look at? There's more. We could look at Raphael's. See a very similar pattern. You don't have to use the same template, but it's a good looking template. So you can like click on the CV, like I bet you didn't know this about Raphael, but he plays soccer. Like you're really good at it. I mean, look at that face. But yeah, so like, your website is totally up to you on like what you want to do and like how you want to code it up. These are some examples, but I want to show you some non-GitHub. These are all made with GitHub, but let me show you some non-GitHub ones. Here's one that was made with Wix. So this is like just a drag and drop maker, website maker. So this was a student that graduated, and now he's a graduate student at Johns Hopkins University working with the guy that discovered dark energy. Yeah, so kind of a flex, and you'll see why. But yeah, so he has like a whole bio page that talks about him, and like this is his, beautiful smile. His name's UK. He has his like curriculum vitae like typed up into a web page format, and you can like, he has a contact him. Like we can look at all of his science. He has like an overview page for all of his science projects he did. Cosmology, lots of cosmology, stellar astrophysics, atomic molecular stuff, physics, I think. Linked to his publication list when he published stuff, and he like has software that he developed. Big brain. And he also has like a hobby page, for example. This is a portfolio with like photography. So he loves to do photography, and they look really cool. I wish I could take photos that look this nice. And each one of them has like little things about them, which is really cool. And he's also like a musician, and this part is under construction, but he played like viola da gamba, I think is what he played. But yeah, he's really, really talented. But this is his website he designed with like, this is like simply a drag and drop. He even has links to his Twitter. I would be warned, be careful. You might have some things on your Twitter if you weren't careful when you were younger. But if you choose to put like social media, you can do that as well. But yeah, so this is a good example of one that you could do with like a drag and drop editor. Another good one, this is like, he paid for that custom URL, so there's no like thing on it, but if you do a free version, it'll have this like Wix thing on the top. But other than that, it looks really nice. Here's like another, I believe this is a graduate student or a postdoc. So this is their page. They have like a whole research section about like, the discovery of planets that they discovered, probing the atmosphere. Like these are all projects that you can read about. Links to NASA, very cool. But yeah, that's just one example of a website. It's really cool. And of course, like links to the CVs, how to contact this person, etc. Maybe you want to make one with WordPress. This one is this is another student that graduated. He's now a graduate student at Caltech, I believe, doing some like stellar astrophysics stuff. But he likes to write blogs, I think. Like he has like a whole like journal club blog where he likes to just like write stories about whatever he's been doing, which is a totally valid thing. If that's your kind of like passion, you like to like write about stuff, maybe you like journalism or whatever, and you want to write about your time at Berkeley, you could totally do that. What does that say? Squishy pendulum. Nice. But yeah, it's got all the other things: outreach, teaching. He really liked teaching and stuff, research, etc. What else? There's more. Lots more. Oh yeah, you're gonna love this. So this is what happens if you do it like raw, like with like straight up, just regular, like start coding with like a blank file and just like code like you would in Python. It'll probably look like this. At least he did it himself, no help. So this is Nick Choksey. He's also a graduate student here at Berkeley. He works with Professor Eugene Chang. Very, very big brain person. But you can see it's very bare bones. He's got a picture of his dog, very cute. Picture of himself, really nice. He has like links to the departments he's in. His CV is like right there, clean as day. This is what it looks like. Very bare bones, minimalist. Not caring so much about the art style, but the content on there is what was important. But this is like what a very, very bare bones. If you want to challenge yourself to do it just in straight code, you can do that as well. But I promise it'll probably take a lot longer time than the drag and drop websites. So, and then here's just like another. Oh, that one's not working. Whoopsies. But yeah, and then this is just like another example of like a GitHub version, where like that looks completely different. This is like a professor at University of Tokyo, so it's gonna look a lot different, a lot more bare bones. That's her choice, but it has like a whole bunch of like talks and research and stuff that she's done. But nonetheless, a good picture is always important to have on a website. I think it kind of lets people know who you are as a person. But yeah, those are just a few examples. I kind of rushed through them because I wanted to give you time to start working on one. Maybe pick whatever you like, Wix, Squarespace, whatever you may have heard of. They're probably all fine. Google Sites is a good option too. These are just some inspiration examples. We're going to upload these slides too, so you can click on the websites and look at them again for more inspiration. But that is everything I had today. The rest of today's lecture is going to be just kind of like, workshop time. If you want to work on making your website, getting it started, you're more than welcome to. If not, then you're free to leave, or you can work on your CV if you haven't submitted that. I'm gonna upload the homework 9 document to B Courses right now, so you can look at like instructions on how to go about making a website. But yeah, and instructors will be walking around to help you out make a website if you would like. Is there any questions? Okay, cool. Yeah, for the people that are on Zoom, if you want to be in a breakout room, I can put you in one, but if you want to leave, that's totally fine as well.